Unthinkable. Our missiles obliterated everything, proclaimed one source close to intelligence officials, igniting a storm of controversy that rippled through policy circles around the globe. Everyone wants to know how much destruction actually took place during the strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, and whether the official narrative can be trusted. Is this a historic turning point that abruptly halts a nation's atomic ambitions for years? Or is it just a momentary setback that will spur renewed determination behind closed doors? Today we dive deep into this jaw-dropping story, separating sensational rumor from genuine facts, to reveal the complicated realities that swirl around every rumor of nuclear sabotage. Make no mistake, this is no simple geopolitical spat over trade disputes or minor military maneuvers. We are talking about a targeted operation claimed to have taken out 3 of Iran's most fortified nuclear facilities, sending shockwaves across the regional balance of power. In this episode, we will dissect the labyrinth of conflicting assessments, why some American officials claim the Iranian nuclear program was set back by only a few months, while others insist it has been crippled for years. How did this operation unfold in the first place? What role might Israeli forces have played? And what does it all mean for the delicate dance of negotiations that was once on the diplomatic table? We will examine leaked reports suggesting that the Defense Intelligence Agency spoke of moderate to severe damage at key sites such as Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan, while the Central Intelligence Agency has come forward with fresh intelligence proclaiming complete destruction of certain installations, a discrepancy that has left even seasoned observers scratching their heads. We will also look at the more shadowy side of intelligence. Are there undiscovered sites that remain operational, hidden behind mountains of concrete and secrecy? And perhaps the most pressing question of all, if Iran resolves to quickly assemble a nuclear device, do they still possess enough materials or clandestine know-how to pull it off in the coming months? But first, we want to paint the epic backdrop to this unfolding drama, with its cast of powerful figures and covert agencies. Picture the busy corridors of the Pentagon, echoes of hurried footsteps mixing with the hum of communications systems that transmit data from halfway around the world, intelligence briefings clutched tightly in the hands of high-ranking officials. Visualize tense phone calls between top generals, their voices measured but urgent, orchestrating a multi-pronged effort to gather every piece of information about the immediate aftermath of these strikes. Meanwhile, in an undisclosed facility, advanced satellites beam detailed imagery of darkened complexes in Iran, some entrances seemingly collapsed, while others remain curiously intact. To assemble these puzzle pieces, the United States intelligence community has deployed all of its specialized agencies. The National Security Agency has been closely listening to phone calls and combing through internet communications for signs that could confirm or contradict recent statements regarding Fordow's condition. That site, allegedly so deeply buried under a mountain that no conventional weapon could seriously threaten it, has emerged as the focal point of the biggest disagreements. If it truly sustained moderate damage, some analysts say it might be unusable for months, or even permanently if reconstruction is deemed too costly or futile. Yet others suggest that if those widely reported entrance collapses are overstated, laboratory work might resume in record time. This narrative gains another dimension when we account for what happened at Natanz, a site that was no stranger to sabotage attempts long before the most recent raids. Iran has consistently invested in strengthening it, digging deeper tunnels, fortifying the facility with additional barriers, and installing advanced air defenses in anticipation of a foreign attack. Yet, over a matter of hours, stealth bombers soared overhead, with special operations forces possibly guiding precision strikes to ensure maximum structural damage. As rumors swirl that even the exits needed to release vented gases were sealed off, the question becomes, just how extensive was the real impact on the advanced centrifuges that many believed were integral to any Iranian push toward nuclear capability? And then, of course, there is Isfahan, a facility that is said to be crucial for converting raw uranium into a form suitable for rapid weaponization. With the repeated claims that Isfahan was reduced to smoldering rubble, we must wonder how much operation can continue in secret, or whether a critical bottleneck in the uranium enrichment process has indeed been created. Insiders at the Central Intelligence Agency have teased newly obtained evidence suggesting complete destruction of certain critical workshops, reinforcing the possibility that if Iran elects to rebuild from the ground up, it could be a matter of years before they regain that specialized capacity. Here's where the real intrigue begins. The Defense Intelligence Agency's initial report, crafted shortly after the bombers returned, described mostly moderate to severe damage, with a margin of uncertainty that left the door open for diverging interpretations. Officials who have read this classified document reveal that it recognized the potential for a swift and clandestine rebuild if the damage assessments turned out to be off. Meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency counters that a very trustworthy source has produced data confirming that not only were the facilities destroyed, but also that any attempt at reconstruction will involve lengthy processes, specialized imported equipment, and engineering challenges that cannot be surmounted in mere months. In the midst of these conflicting summaries, major players in Washington argue over how to present the story to the world. One day, you have the president appearing defiant at a news conference in the Netherlands, proclaiming that everything was totally obliterated, stoking the fires of a public narrative that the Iranian nuclear threat has been dealt a fatal blow. Read a bit deeper, however, and you discover officials from the Pentagon or the Department of State cautioning that it may be premature to crow about any final victory. But wait. If the truth is uncertain, can we know for sure how quickly Iran could bounce back if the actual damage was more limited than some officials claim? We will get to that soon. First, if you are finding this analysis revealing so far, consider offering your support by showing your appreciation. A simple gesture goes a long way. Scroll or tap to let us know that this story matters to you, so that we can dig deeper and bring more investigative pieces that cut through government spin. Every gesture of support helps keep these investigations alive. Some intelligence veterans say we have seen a saga like this before. Old-timers recall the swirl of debates leading to 2003, when American intelligence on another Middle Eastern nation's weapons advancements was criticized as politicized and lacking in concrete proof. Back then, intense statements about slam-dunk evidence and imminent threats shaped public perception and fueled policy decisions with profound consequences. Could history be repeating itself in a new guise, with hasty claims overshadowing careful deliberation? In the case of Iran, the stakes are extraordinarily high. Historians trace the ups and downs of the Iranian nuclear program through different chapters, from the earliest hints that clandestine developments might be underway, to the diplomatic breakthroughs in the 2015 nuclear accord that was hailed by some as a pragmatic approach but scorned by others as naive appeasement. Now, with the dust still settling from the latest bombing runs, some fear that Iran may retreat entirely from the international community, forging ahead in undisclosed underground locations, free from the watchful eyes of inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency. That brings us to the Israeli connection. For almost 2 weeks leading up to the American strikes, Israel had engaged in what newspapers now refer to as a shadow war, targeting Iranian nuclear scientists, official convoys, and other strategic points that might hamper the program's progress. The Israeli leadership has long asserted that a nuclear-armed Iran would be an existential threat, driving them to take bold, preemptive action. Experts note that Israel's advanced surveillance capabilities likely uncovered vulnerabilities American forces also exploited, a synergy that could amplify the overall impact of this combined campaign. Yet here looms the paradox. Large-scale mission success might also galvanize Iranian hardliners, who say only nuclear arms can protect them from foreign aggression. In analyzing all this, the United States Senate found itself in a predicament. Initially, intelligence officials were expected to offer a thorough briefing on the extent of the destruction. At the last minute, additional cabinet figures like the Secretary of State took center stage, overshadowing the specialists who had compiled the data. Given the conflicting conclusions among agencies like the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, and even the National Security Agency's eavesdropping team, some senators demanded the unvarnished truth. Could it be that the administration wants to accentuate an image of definitive triumph, while certain intelligence analysts caution that the victory might be ephemeral? Meanwhile, the entire Middle East region warily awaits the next steps. Diplomatic watchers wonder, will Tehran attempt to recoup any measure of sympathy on the global stage, painting these strikes as an unprovoked act of aggression that bypassed open negotiations? Iran has, in the past, proven adept at using moments of crisis to bolster its political narrative at home. If the newly declared emotional calls for vengeance unify the Iranian populace in support of an accelerated nuclear push, the purported attempt to cripple the program might ironically backfire. But experts caution that it is not all about how the Iranian government spins the situation. The capacity to rebuild depends heavily on the hardware, scientific expertise, and international supply chains that support advanced nuclear work. Detractors of the program argue that with certain specialized conversion facilities destroyed, and with the world now even more vigilant against any suspicious imports heading to Iran, the practical feasibility of resurrecting the impacted sites anytime soon is slim. On the other hand, some intelligence insiders mention that Iranian experts may have Plan B labs that were never declared to the International Atomic Energy Agency. If these exist, the real blow from the strikes could be limited, enabling a clandestine route to remain open. Now, consider the presence of Secretary of State Marco Rubio and continued behind-the-scenes maneuverings at the White House, as more revelations creep into public view. One of the hottest talking points right now is the very real possibility that the Iranian stockpile of enriched uranium, material that had been under close watch even before the war, was quietly moved in the days or weeks prior to the attacks. If that is true, suspended cascades of centrifuges or demolished fueling stations might not be as decisive a blow to the program as some initially believed. Sure, it would take time to re-establish the necessary infrastructure, but if the bombs missed a significant portion of the actual uranium, that is synergy the Iranian nuclear community might harness. And so, we return to the widely conflicting scenario painted by intelligence agencies. The Defense Intelligence Agency's moderate damage assessment set off the earliest wave of reporting, fueling media headlines about limited success that overshadowed the president's bold pronouncements. Even key members of the Senate Intelligence Committee expressed skepticism, referencing the DIA's low confidence disclaimer at the end of its own briefing. Then, like a lightning bolt, the Central Intelligence Agency counters with brand new sources and methods that claim the facilities are basically unsalvageable. The tension between these interpretations places policymakers and the public in a precarious position, forced to decide which narrative is more compelling. Those with deeper knowledge of intelligence processes caution that we rarely get full consensus across agencies, especially when analyzing highly complex issues with so many unknown variables. One factor that always complicates the analysis is the question of how actively Iran was hedging its bets. Officials from Europe and Israel had already suspected that Iran was maintaining parallel and undisclosed programs. The best American or Israeli bombs can do is eliminate known vulnerabilities. If even one hidden location survived the onslaught, the timeline for Iran's potential weaponization might remain shorter than the public has been led to believe. By now, you are probably on the edge of your seat, wondering why the usual watchdogs, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or even neutral third-party inspectors, cannot provide a conclusive account. The truth is, that vantage point is compromised by the storms of war. Access has been severely restricted, monitoring staff evacuated for their own protection, and those who remain are often reliant on partial data. Official statements from the International Atomic Energy Agency remain cautious, simply acknowledging that some facilities were indeed struck and heavily damaged. Yet there is little clarity on how much radioactive material was relocated in the days before the bombs fell. At this point, if you are engrossed by the swirling contradictions and want to be part of uncovering further realities behind these dramatic developments, consider subscribing for more. We will be bringing you in-depth looks at not only nuclear issues in Iran, but also other hot-button topics around the globe that rarely receive the nuanced attention they deserve. Stay tuned, and together we will unearth the truth behind the headlines. Let us move forward in our chronicle to the aftermath. The day after the bombs fell, the Iranian supreme leader addressed the nation, framing the incident as a direct assault on Iran's sovereignty and vowing to retaliate if necessary. World leaders tried to keep communication lines open, with some urging calm to prevent a spiral into larger regional conflict. The fear that a further escalation might prompt Iran to react militarily in the Strait of Hormuz or to weaponize regional proxy forces looms ever present. Will the American administration's assertion of a decisive victory inadvertently become a spark that ignites a broader confrontation? Political figures in the United States wrestle with this dilemma. They must walk a tightrope, satisfying a domestic base that welcomes strong action against perceived adversaries, while also grappling with the potential blowback if estimates of the Iranian threat were exaggerated. Those who recall earlier controversies, like the overshadowing of early intelligence warnings in the days leading up to the attacks of September 11th, or the fiasco surrounding the rationale for the 2003 invasion, approach any broad declaration with skepticism, Adding complexity to the matrix is Israel's own stake in the matter. Having invested years in clandestine operations aimed at stalling Iran's nuclear capabilities, Israeli leaders now feel vindicated for striking first. The question is, can that sense of vindication last? If Fordow was truly left unscathed in certain critical sections, then Israel's campaign may only have delayed the problem rather than solved it. Israeli public opinion is sharply divided. Some celebrate mission success, while others fear that the reported devastation might be illusions fed to them by governments seeking to claim major achievements. For the American public, the importance of clarifying the extent of the damage hinges on a fundamental trust issue. Most draw parallels to the momentous statements from past administrations regarding conflicts overseas. Foreign policy experts point out that the controversies among the intelligence community could undermine confidence in official pronouncements. Yet also note that obtaining coherent and unified data in a matter of days, especially from heavily guarded complexes thousands of miles away, could be a tall order under any circumstances. Enter the figure of the National Security Agency, tasked with intercepting the phone calls of Iranian scientists and officials discussing the aftermath. If intercepts reveal desperation or panic among site handlers, that might support the more extreme claims of total destruction. Alternatively, if the intercepts indicate calm and a quick pivot to alternate facilities, that is a completely different narrative. Early leaks suggest fragments of dialogues acknowledging heavy hits, but also hinting at possible workarounds. Summaries of these conversations remain classified, fueling further speculation. All these conflicting signals converge in the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings, where certain senators want unfiltered truth. They worry about repeating mistakes of the past, where intelligence was shaded to build public support for an administration's predetermined stance. The committee's ranking members, from both sides of the aisle, stress the need to hear from the actual intelligence analysts themselves. In one particularly tense exchange, a senior senator demanded the presence of the Director of National Intelligence, who eventually arrived to provide clarifications, but reportedly focused more on reaffirming the administration's narrative than exploring the uncertain nuances that the Defense Intelligence Agency had emphasized. Could the truth be that everyone is right to an extent, but from different angles? One possibility is that certain sections of these facilities, like crucial conversion labs, specialized centrifuge assemblies, or advanced engineering wings, were all but annihilated, whereas other compartments remain accessible enough to host limited research or stand as the foundation for a rebuilding effort once the dust settles. Another theory is that Iran's leadership had anticipated such strikes and moved the most sensitive equipment, possibly even the uranium itself, out of harm's way. We have only scattered hints, not definitive answers. Moreover, we should not ignore the psychological dimension. Degrading a country's nuclear infrastructure is not only about physically demolishing centrifuges or storage units. It also involves signaling to that nation's scientists and policymakers that major powers will not hesitate to disrupt their progress by force. If the intended message was to break morale, early signs do not suggest that Iranian leaders are retreating from their stance. Instead, some observers report that local media inside Iran, while acknowledging damage, is playing up the narrative of resilience, painting the attacks as evidence that outside forces fear Iran's industrial and scientific progress. It is precisely this type of determination that raises fears of further escalation. We have witnessed ample historical cases where attempts to forcibly halt nuclear ambitions ended up fueling them instead. Think of how neighboring countries around the world have responded to perceived existential threats. This leads us to the final puzzle piece. Is this the start of a relentless cycle of covert hits and expansions, or a short circuit that brings everyone back to the negotiating table under more urgent terms? Many international relations experts hold out hope that the clarity of mutual vulnerability might produce a new impetus for diplomacy. If both the Iranian leadership and the American side realize the potential cost of indefinite hostilities, there may be a window, albeit narrow, for constructive talks, possibly mediated by European partners who have tried to salvage some aspects of the old nuclear deal. But that window could also slam shut if the two sides remain entrenched in their blame game and public declarations of total triumph or resolute defiance. In conclusion, we are left to grapple with a swirl of contradictory intelligence bulletins and no small amount of political showmanship. The future is not certain. As you have heard, Opinions range from warnings that these bombings have done little to slow the march of an Iranian nuclear breakthrough, to more optimistic accounts that declare entire sites destroyed, forcing Tehran back by years. Perhaps the only sure thing is that the global security environment is more charged than ever, and the possibility of unforeseen escalations looms in the distance. Thank you for walking with us through the complex maze of intelligence reports, contradictory statements, and behind-the-scenes power plays. If you are as fascinated as we are, maybe even a bit alarmed, let your voice be heard so we can continue shining a light on these critical global events. Every gesture, every comment, and every piece of feedback helps ensure that we keep sharing the untold stories and exploring pivotal questions when chaos and confusion reign. So, keep your eyes open, stay curious, and hold on to that sense of wonder about what might emerge next from the corridors of power. We may not have all the absolute answers, yet, in times like these, honest questions and open discussions can guide us toward the truth. One thing is certain: as conflicting accounts continue to surface, the shape of the Iranian nuclear landscape will evolve, and the world will be watching closely, ready to interpret every clue. The story is far from over.